All right, everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started. But before I even introduce myself, I want to read a quote that I think will set the tone for this panel. I've always admired women like myself who are not afraid of their dark side, because that's where we grow and learn. That's where we find out what we're made of and find out just how much we can survive. I think that encapsulates and describes all of the talented panelists beside me. My name is Barbra Dillon. I am the editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press, and I'm honored to be here today in what has become a perennial panel on the convention circuit to discuss what entices these wonderfully talented panelists to the dark side of art, what inspires their creative processes, and how they have embraced and applied the darker sides of life to telling new stories that will inspire, impact, and connect with readers. So allow me to introduce each of our panelists. First, next to me on my left here, we have Susan Lee, who is the founder of Women on the Dark Side. She is also the writer and illustrator of the comic book Wraith of Love and author of the book Shadow of the Night. Susan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Next to Susan is Megan Hutchison, who is the illustrator of the Image Comics series Rockstars and co-creator of the graphic novel Vesna. She also has a story with Sandy King Carpenter and John Carpenter in 2018's Halloween anthology. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. Next to Megan is Mairghread Scott, who is a TV and comic book writer with titles including Batgirl, Transformers, Toil and Trouble, The City on the Other Side, Marvel Rising Secret Warriors, and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Mairghread, thank you so much for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have MD Marie, who is a comic book and screenwriter who recently released her 4-issue miniseries, Vindication, through Image Comics and Top Cow. MD, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be talking a lot about the darker side of entertainment today across a wide variety of entertainment mediums, so let's start by defining it. What are we talking about when we talk about dark content, and what does that mean to you, both as a fan and as a creator? And Susan, we're going to start with you.
For me, dark always means complex. I'm not a big horror fan, so I don't always automatically go to horror when I think of dark. I love dark psychological things. I love dark comedy, like Santa Clarita Diet. One of my favorite films is Fight Club, because it's such a deep psychological exploration of, the other side of us. I think, to me, dark asks the questions that none of us really want to ask, and looks at the parts of us that we don't really get permission to look at all the time.
Megan, what about you?
I like horror, so. But, I mean, to kind of build off what you were saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be horror. And also, I create mostly horror content, but a lot of my stuff is really funny and weird. And, so it's like horror comedy, I guess. And, kind of to speak to your, your point about, dark comedies, I mean, there is something very funny and, kind of pointing out the irony and the humor in really messed up stuff. I'm trying not to swear. That's why I sound like I don't know what I'm saying.
We try to keep it PG-13,
but very difficult for me.
There aren't a lot of kids here today, so.
Yeah, some F-bombs might slip out. But, I think it's, when you're creating dark content, it's kind of like a reflection of what's really going on kind of around you and in the world, and it's kind of showing off that aspect of things, but also it's good to have a sense of humor about it, because if you don't, you're gonna just be sad all the time. I mean, that's cool too, I guess.
Mairghread, what about you?
Yeah, Teenage Me was all about being sad all the time. I guess in terms of dark content, yeah, it does cover a range. I definitely think that there is an aspect of having to look at failings and failure. That tends to be a lot of what I get into with dark content. I guess it's the question of what really separates you. For me, a lot of my work tends to be about what really separates you from the person who's a quote-unquote villain. At what point in the Milgram experience do you walk out of the room? And I think for a lot of people, it's about really trying to show and lure people further down that path than they think that they would want to go. And it's no, you're rooting for the bad guy now. Just so you know. And I think that that's a really important part. Is that I think a lot of the work that I really like about the dark side is sort of challenging the idea that morality is intrinsic, and that your morality is an unwavering point in your life.
And Dave, what about you?
For me, the dark side is the stuff that goes on inside your head, death, murder, revenge, those kinds of things that we think about but don't actually do. So we put it in books. That's the dark side for me. It's not necessarily horror, but it's those things that sometimes we're afraid to think about, or those things that we think about but we can't express because either people will think you're crazy or very, very evil. So that's what it is for me.
Excellent. And I'd love for our audience to be able to learn more about you as individuals as well as creative-minded professionals. So what attracted you to the darker side of entertainment? And Susan, again, we'll start with you.
I was unaware that what attracted me was dark. Like, it was just me. So one of the first things I wrote when I was in elementary school, I think it was a short story about a carriage being driven by ghost horses. And I did too. And I didn't think anything of it because that's just what I thought of, and my teacher gave me an A+ because I'm awesome. And then she wrote on the bottom, you're the future Agatha Christie. And I wasn't that well read at the time. So I was like, I don't know who that is, but I'll have to look that up now. And it was in the days before the internet, so I had to go to the library and figure out who Agatha Christie was. And then when I started, I've been a theater director for almost 30 years. And when I started directing theater, I found myself drawn to pieces that explored relationships and the things that we don't talk about in relationships, and trying to find kind of the light through the darkness. So one of the first pieces I directed was this terrible, terrible scene from a terrible, terrible play about a man who has AIDS, and they had taken Manhattan and basically made it like a leper colony for people with AIDS. And his girlfriend comes to the colony to sleep with him to get AIDS so she can stay with him. Really joyful and uplifting. Yeah. When I looked at it as the relationship between them, why would somebody want to do that? What would drive you to want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, even if it meant you were going to die horrifically? And it didn't occur to me until later when we were actually up and running, and somebody was like, oh my God, that's so dark. I was like, oh, is it? I don't know. It's kind of the way I think. So it's always just been a part of me. I like complications, which makes my life difficult sometimes. Interesting. And I think also, I had what I thought was a pretty normal and functional childhood until I look back now and go, well, maybe it wasn't quite so normal. There was a lot of anger in my house. There was a lot of my mom. I could always tell when my mom was mad because something would be thrown and broken. And so I think I lived in that environment and sort of absorbed the darkness and was unaware that it was affecting me that way. But to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way because I wouldn't be who I am today. So.
Megan, what about you?
I also grew up around a lot of violence, but it wasn't in my house. My family's South African, so I spent a lot of my childhood growing up in apartheid South Africa, so that really fucked me up. And just like speaking to that though, like growing up with violence around you, it is a way to channel it, and especially as a woman, it's a way to make yourself feel safe, because I'm sure some of you guys know that it's not always safe for women in this world. And also because I come from, when we immigrated to the US, like my parents didn't know anything about American culture, so they just kind of let me read whatever I wanted. So I just read every horror book ever made, which was very inappropriate. And, because they were like, oh, if you like reading, then just read whatever you want. So my mom would just take me to the bookstore. So I grew up on R.L. Stine. Whoop whoop, your street? Yeah. Hey, you know what I'm talking about? Super violent. So that's kind of like where this all started. And I also grew up on comic books. My brother would go to the comic store every weekend. So actually, the guy who runs my comic book store that I started going to when I was 10 years old is downstairs. Nuclear Comics. If you guys need comic books, you should go there. So I think like all of that kind of, you know, festered in me and created this, grew in me. And I also really liked violent music. You know, like I grew up doing grunge, so like STP and 9 Inch Nails, still listen to them, right? So that was also a really big influence on me because I'm a musician as well, and so it's just like I love all of that like hard music. And my parents were like, I don't know what this is, but okay. So they've since come around and accepted me. My mom's just like, she gave up. She was like, okay, just go do that, go get your weird tattoos and have fun.
Mairghread, what about you?
I'm just thinking of my mom threatening to break my Jagged Little Pill CD. She's like, I'm not staying in the car for an hour listening to sad women sing about sadness. It's a great album. It's a great album. Someone wrote a defense about it recently as a fantastic. I don't know. Like it's a weird thing to like try and look back on yourself and be like, these are the things that influenced me. My mom had a master's degree in sociology. My family was mostly normal, except that she had this weird quirk about good. Like she would never praise us as good, and she would talk about good. She would talk about honor. Like we have to have like the only family in like the 21st century that would on a daily basis be like, well, what's the honorable thing to do? Because we can't know whether or not this will turn out well for everyone in the end, but we can know whether or not we committed our own actions according to our just values. Well, I was like, okay. So I didn't know that was weird until for a real long time. My dad was a big Shakespeare nut, so it was like, we could never watch our movies, but we were always watching, like, I distinctly remember being 6 and watching Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, and like the guys standing on the tree, like, you know, and it's like, no, this is culture, this is good. And like, we didn't have a lot of like money, so I remember like, watching like, I remember seeing like Battleship Potemkin, like, every summer for 3 years, because that's what the library showed, and like, so there's a lot of like weird things where it was like, culture started to equal like darkness. It's like that's how we had to interact with that kind of stuff. There certainly is a certain amount of cheating where, just as a writer, it's easier to make things more dramatic and therefore more acceptable or more deep if you make them darker. But I think also just there's just a lot of that swirling around, and honestly, as you know, a young white girl in the 90s desperate for approval, the one thing you can't be is angry. Ever. Like, you can never be angry. You can be sad, but you can't be angry about it. And so that, it is funny because I remember, like, even in the cartoons, like, if women got angry, they went crazy. Like, that's what Dark Phoenix taught us, was if you get angry, you become powerful, but then you go nuts and we have to kill you when we're really sad about it. And that was very frustrating for me. And so you gave that wonderful triangle of like power equals darkness equals bad equal, you know, so I've spent the rest of my life trying to untangle that knot. Thanks,
Empty, what about you?
First, there's a lot of echo up here, so I'm having a hard time hearing your question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm picking up from them what you're asking.
Yeah.
So I believe the question was what drew me to the dark side, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm about to confess. I'm about to confess way too much. So I'm going to start there and then more. When I was a kid, I was really, my friends call it more blues, but I was a super, super nice kid. Like, I would give away my toys, and, you know, I would have tea parties, and I was just a really bright kid. And then I found out the world wasn't fair, and people were mistreating me, and people had prejudices against me for how I was born, as opposed to, you know, I'm saying, you know, because I'm black, as opposed to, you know, it being a personal interaction with me that gave them a prejudice. And that made me really, really depressed. And I would journal, and everything that I wrote was really dark because it was from the perspective of being sad and being hurt. So that's how I was drawn to the dark side. And my stuff was just really real. It was just really, really sad.
The next question, I want to delve a little bit deeper into those inspirations. I'd love for you each to give one or two examples of creators that have inspired your work, as well as creators that have really come to define darkness with their art. And Susan, again, we'll start with you.
I started out primarily as a director, so when I was young, I was living in a small city in Canada, and I didn't realize what movies could do until I saw all that jazz. And that just sort of made my brain melt and go, you can do something like that? I was 18 years old, I'd never seen anything like that. So that had a huge influence on, I think as I became a director, looking for something that was interesting and complex. As a writer and as a reader, I'm a populist. I love Stephen King, especially his stuff like The Green Mile and Doris Claiborne, sort of the off stuff. The Shining still scares the hell out of me all the time. And I don't know, I always loved movies that were a little off the beaten track. I loved indie films. I'm still hugely addicted to Tarantino because he's just twisted and wrong, but I love all of it. And but yet part of me is really, I always said as a director I was kind of a combination of Tarantino and Barry Levinson. To figure out how those two fit together.
Megan, what about you?
This is hard to answer. I actually grew up, I was a sci-fi kid, so I grew up, my favorite show was X-Files, so, right?
Yeah.
You know what's really fucked up? My fiance's never seen a single episode of X-Files. I know, I'm marrying this man. He's written Star Trek TNG, and he also has never seen Star Trek TNG, so we have a lot of catching up to do before the wedding day. I know, it's inexcusable. But, I love science fiction. I grew up I read every book by Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury. I love all that stuff. I really love short forms, like collected short stories was like my jam. So I used to just when I wasn't reading R.L. Stine, I was just reading every science fiction book I could get my hands on. Which I've never really made that connection before, but science fiction can be really dark too, because you're dealing with especially near future stuff, can be very bleak, and hopeless. It's really sad. I'm making myself sad now.
Really, it's a fun panel.
We're super. My nickname is the Perky Goth, so I'm actually a lot of fun to hang out with.
So you're less emo than other goths? I said you're less emo than other goths?
Yes, absolutely. I'm always smiling.
You have a smirk.
People I gotta stop smiling so much. No, I'm happy. I'm so happy. I'm a Tim Burton kid. I grew up on Tim Burton films, and that really influenced me, for better or worse. Especially in my art, I grew up drawing, and my shit looks like Tim Burton. My old stuff, my new stuff doesn't really anymore, but that definitely had a big influence on me.
Just a quick note, we're going to try as much as possible, just because of the WonderCon rules, to keep the cuss words to...
I don't even know I'm doing it.
I know. No, it's fine.
Don't worry,
Wait till we do the podcast. As un-PG.
We'll have the unfiltered version, yes.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Mairghread, what about you?
It's funny too, because you mentioned TNG, and I totally grew up my parakeet could sing the Star Trek theme. I was end of TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, that was where I grew up, which is great, because actually Deep Space Nine did a lot of things about breaking down morale. I still remember that. It was Devil in the Pale Moonlight, what?
In the Pale.
Oh, it's just In the Pale Moonlight, yes, thank you. But that moment where Cisco was and would I do it again? I would. I was I can live with it. I can live with it. And it's oh my god, the fact that he says it twice, I never remember the actual name of it, but the TNG episode, I just called the Amnesty International episode, the 4 lights. By the way, if you ever watch that, terrible setup for that. I don't know why, the octogenarian is going on the, repelling mission. What is that? But just great episode. Once you get past the first bit, it's like the somewhere in time of Star Trek episodes. It's like just fast forward 20 minutes, you're dead. But yeah, like I liked. There was a lot of stuff that explored a lot of like unintended consequences and sort of like how did this really play out. And it's funny because I never thought of it as really dark, but I was like super into Animorphs as a kid. Like that really. Animorphs got weird. Yeah, there was the kid trapped as the bird, and then there was like the whole Animorph Chronicles, and you felt like, oh no, the bad guys aren't so bad, but also don't trust grown-ups, but also like I'm alone and strange with a strange land. I don't know. This is very disjointed. I'm trying to go fast, so they're not cohesive in any sense.
We need a 3-hour panel.
But yeah, and also we just had a lot of Shakespeare, and if it's not the comedies, and honestly, even in the comedies, it's like that dude just the body count racks up real high.
MD, what about you?
My influences from the dark side, right? Okay. I feel like I'm just confessing way too much right now.
Yeah, it always turns into
like,
this
come up here
somehow.
and like, yeah, you're kind of, you need therapy. And I'm like, I know. But, my influences, and I also feel kind of old.
Wait.
Because I was going to tell you, Susan, actually, I watched The Shining like 3 times, and I do not get it.
Yeah. What? Somebody once said, look at The Shining as a Kubrick film, not as a Stephen King novel. And it changes your whole perspective on it. Yeah, I don't get it either.
freaking love The Shining.
I'm like, there's twins, they don't say much, there's a big wheel, it's an empty wheel.
She like alien? What? Alien? First of all, the only real reaction anyone ever had to being cornered by an alien was just like who just gives up. But like the thing.
Continue, MD.
I feel like I just lost a friend.
You're not like The Shining. I got crazy about
Okay,
it.
we'll discuss it. I told you I need therapy. But anyway, my influences were actually the actual Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh, yeah.
And being that my mom's family is from a different country, we had a lot of like folk tales. And I guess they were meant to deter us from doing things, but I found it very intriguing. I was like, so then what happened to the demon? Like, what jungle was this? And how hot was it? And, well, that's what she gets. You know, that kind of stuff. So it didn't have the effect that they thought it was going to have. They're like, you know, if you don't say your prayers before bed, I'm like, oh, I'm going to try that tonight. I was that kid saying Bloody Mary in the mirror like 15 times. Like, where is she? You know, and then I would get up the next day and see if I've changed or no, you know. So those kinds of, those were my influences, but the biggest influence on the style in which I write that made it dark was Spawn, the HBO series that used to come on at midnight. That was like a whole awakening for me. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. This is the way I've been wanting to write. This is the level of violence that I need in my life. So those were my influences.
I think it was either Madeline or Maria Alexander said there's a fine line between fear and curiosity. And that's sort of what leads us to the dark side sometimes is you stand at the edge of a forest, and if you don't really embrace your dark side, you're going to be afraid and run away. But what leads us into the dark side is the curiosity of what's on the other side, like what's in the forest.
Yeah, well, and to that effect, I watched a lot of documentaries and stuff, and I was watching a series on haunted hotels in America, right? And I was like, I told my brother, I was like, we should go. He was like, you said they're haunted. I said, yes. He goes, that's a no. I'm like, but we should go see the ghost. We need to talk. He was like,
I want to ensure that we have a lot of time to talk about you as creators yourselves. So when we talk about the creative process, we often consider the introspective nature of how art affects or defines its creator. So as you confront and call upon the dark corners of yourself in creating new content, do you feel that it is an unhealthy process, sort of a necessary evil to bring about great art? Or do you feel that it provides an opportunity to resolve the darkness that lies within each of you? Susan, again, we'll start with you.
I agree with MD. I think I need therapy. But it's finding the balance of embracing the darkness and not wallowing in it. You know, so much of what I write is cathartic. You write what you know. So I tend to write my feelings. Like the new novel I'm working on right now is incredibly complicated. And coincidentally, my life has been incredibly complicated over the last year. So I'm finding myself, there was a night where I was sitting at home and I was feeling incredibly alone. Can't imagine I'm in my 50s, I'm by myself, all I have is my cat. You know, it was one of those nights. Yeah. Nobody loves me. Nobody loves me. No, thank you. It's going to be me and my cat, Indiana Jones, forever. Yeah, and I was having that moment and I realized what I was writing, my character was having that moment. Her best friend has vanished. She has all of these things pulling on her power. She doesn't know what to do. And I thought, you know what, I can take this feeling and put it into my character, at least right now. I don't know if it'll stay in the book, but it felt really good to be able to go take it sort of out of myself and put it into something else and look at it. When I wrote a screenplay I was writing, I was in the best relationship of my life, but somehow I knew it was going to end, and I ended up writing almost the exact breakup speech I gave to him months before we broke up, and put it in a screenplay because it was basically a screenplay about my lack of romantic encounters. And I find sometimes it's the challenge because you can get caught up in those emotions, and when you do try to put them on paper, whether it's in comic book or art or whatever, it's okay to sort of let that go and use it and not get lost in it. Make sure you pull yourself out of it. If you get too deep in it, then yes, please seek advice of a therapist. But sometimes it's very cathartic, and it helps me sometimes get perspective on why I'm feeling that way. You know, I came out writing that scene feeling alone, going, okay, I'm not alone. I have friends, I have people around me, but it was just that moment, and it enabled me to write the character that way, that she has a breakdown, and at the end of the breakdown, she's like, all right, screw it, I'm alone. Just accept that and move on. And I think hopefully it makes my work more interesting. And I worry sometimes that it's too introspective. So in the editing process, I always have to look at those deeply emotional things and go, is this just me, or is it something that a reader is going to be invested in as well? So that's finding that balance.
Megan, what about you?
When I was a kid, I used to draw and write really, really violent, dark things, and then my parents and people around me were very concerned. So I kind of stopped doing that, and I think that's actually why my stuff became kind of like more, I don't want to say lighthearted because it's not, but like whimsical. Yeah, like my stuff, I guess, is kind of like dark fantasy, whimsy kind of things, right? But, so I live with a writer, and he always says that writing is cheaper than therapy. So I kind of do take that to heart, you know, like I do find like catharsis and kind of like dumping all my emotions into my work. I am doing a book with him at the end of this year for Image, and it is the most stone cold bummer. I'm co-writing it too, and it's super, super depressing, so you all have to read it. I'll plug it at the end of this. But it came about because both of us were going through some really hard stuff last year. And so we just both like kind of like took all of our grief and dumped it into this book. And now I'm going to force that all on you. So you're welcome. But I think, I mean, with all the arts, you know, too, because like I also play music, so it's just like I dump my emotions and stuff into that too. And I think that in every creative aspect, that's a part of it. That's an aspect of it, right? Or is that just? Am I right?
No, that's just you.
Susan.
Me and Megan are gonna have a little pig party in the corner.
Mairghread, what about you?
Yeah, no, everyone keeps talking about therapy. It's like, this ain't campus, so therapy, what else are gonna get? I guess let's talk a little bit about the especially in a different way, like how-tos, you know? Because I'm someone who has long-term chronic depression and anxiety, and I do tend to write darker stuff. And for example, but I realized that because of that, I try and take very specific precautions now, because especially if you're writing long format or if you're writing like comics or something, you kind of have to keep dipping into these mindsets that are not healthy places while trying to maintain some semblance of health on your own life. So for example, like the latest issue of Batgirl that just came out, we pushed her into a very dark place. And I wanted to make sure that didn't start bleeding. When I was younger, I would just let that bleed all over the rest of my life, you know, because you're 20 or whatever, and like it doesn't matter. But now I have a 2-year-old and responsibility, and I have to keep getting up in the morning. I can't just lay there thinking about sadness. So what I try and do is I try and build essentially rituals around this kind of thing. So I have a specific playlist for certain characters or for certain issues. So essentially, I think of it as like walking down the staircase and then walking back up the staircase when I'm done. So for example, like this issue was all about Barbra and her brother James. James is not a happy person and not a healthy person either. So when I go to start writing that, if I'm in a happy mood though, we turn on the playlist, we start walking down the staircase, we start thinking about the world from his point of view, and then at the end, I try and make myself actually have a playlist that is Mairghread's playlist, where it's literally like, this is your baseline, you know, you're having a good day soundtrack that you want to listen to. And so at the end of writing, I'll try and walk back up the staircase to me and just try and really consciously close that box. And sometimes it's harder. I was writing a creator-owned that had a lot of influences on The Shining because I liked it. But I was writing it over Christmas, and that was a hell of a whiplash thing where it's like, shining, Christmas, but having that ability to say, this is the space. This is the space where this is going to happen. And then at the end to say, these are not my problems. This is not my space anymore. I'm going to go back to my life and that's okay. It became really important to me because I think writing about darkness doesn't make you broken, but writing about darkness and exploring those darker sides can be a really good excuse to let yourself break. And I think that it's really important for people who want to do this long term to build in some kind of safeguards, because you shouldn't have to suffer to make art. You know, or at least you shouldn't have to suffer forever to make art, because I don't think anyone, as much as we all want to make great art, no one wants to be, you know, have a terrible life to do it.
Well said, Mairghread, thank you. MD, what about you?
For me, it is total catharsis. Usually, I go to my dark place because people make me angry. So, when I go there, I put all of that anger into writing my stories, and I'm also a person who has a deep desire for balance, so I try and right the world's wrongs in my story writing, which means that I have to write as raw as possible, and I want my readers to understand the pain that I put in the story, and in order for me to do that, I have to go to a dark place, and in order for me to articulate it well, I really have to focus on it, and then write it, and then resolve it. And that's kind of my method. But that, I mean, I have a very short temper already, so pretty much everything makes me mad. I'm like, feather fell! What the hell was that bird doing? You know, just kind of like, I'm always on the edge. So I got a lot of story ideas. But that's, for me, going to a dark place is not it's not a bad thing for me. I understand your depression better than you probably realize, but and also I want to redeem myself. Children of the corn scared the crap out of me.
No, I totally. I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to feel bad. It's so
I'm like,
easy to
I'm
pass. It's like a softball.
She was like, because I liked it. And I'm like, but anyway,
We try to keep this a safe space.
I don't want to lose any more friends.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, for me, it's actually very cathartic to go to that dark place and to have the deep thoughts and then to put them on paper. Ooh.
I think what Mairghread said is really important is, and in each of our own way, we all create our own safe space, because you can't create in that world without having an outlet, a way to get out of it. You know, I loved in Infinity War when Bruce Banner, they're all mixed up in my head because I've been rewatching all of them right now. Where Bruce Banner says it's easy, I'm always angry. Like, I think that's where a lot of us live that create that. It's always there. It's just making sure we have a safe space so that we can beat Bruce Banner as much as possible and not Hulk out too much.
I want to ensure that we have time for audience questions. So is there anyone that has a question for our panelists?
I have a question. Okay, go. I know you guys have been waiting to ask. Actually, you don't know, wait, go ahead. Go ahead, somebody ask. I'm waiting.
Does anyone have a question?
You go. It's on you, man.
If not, we'll go to empty. Go for it.
Okay. Now I forgot my question. So you guys go ahead. It'll come back to me.
Is there anyone that has a question? Yes.
I'm kind of bouncing off what Megan was saying about realizing what sci-fi can be really, really dark. Is there another genre or kind of type of storytelling that you kind of like, when you think about it, you're like, holy crap, that's like really, really dark? Is there like another one that you would like to explore, possibly, and make it a little darker?
Wait, me particularly, or
All
of
of
us?
it. I'm just bouncing off what you were saying earlier.
History's really dark. Like what you were saying about Shakespeare. Like I have a history buff, and it's just like, oh my god, people were really terrible. You know, before the invention of TV, you just go like, I'm gonna go watch them hang this person in the Olympic Square. I'm gonna watch them light this woman on fire. You know, there's a lot of that. So I don't know if that's a genre. Is history a genre?
Sure.
Yeah, it is now.
Sure. Well, I think comedy doesn't. I'd love some more dark comedy. Like, I love Fish Called Wanda, and stuff that just makes you kind of go, oh, I shouldn't be laughing at that, but I can't help but laugh at that. Dexter is actually really a dark comedy if you look at it. Those kinds of things I would love to. I personally would love to explore more of that. I try to bring a lot. The current piece I'm writing, I'm channeling Jim Butcher. So there's a lot of, hopefully, some lightness and sarcasm in it. But yeah, dark comedy I think could be really fun to explore a little more.
It's funny, as soon as you said that, all I could think of was the fact that I was for years utterly addicted to Law and Order SVU. And then my husband finally turned to me and he's like, I can't watch the rape murder show anymore. I was like, why do you do that? And I was like, what? And I realized, like, I don't know about any of you, maybe it's just me. But I kept thinking of that SNL skit where it was like selling this woman like home protection services, and there was like a chart, there's like an XY graph of like your age and men who want to murder you. And at 20, it was all. And it was like, that was the skit. And it became this weird thing, but I feel like there's, at least for me, like there's this weird thing of like, you know, she totally dies at the end, but they got it. Like, or, you know, something like, it became this weird way to like protect yourself, which was like, I'm gonna watch all the, like, I listen to all the like true crime podcasts, and it's just like, I feel like, don't take me to a secondary location.
I'm not leaving this first location.
I love statistics.
It is funny when you work in sort of the dark area of things and you watch things like SVU or CSI and all that, everything becomes, oh my god, I'm going to be a victim. Like, I'm not going to go down that hallway because that's murder central.
You just hope you get murdered by Dean Cain.
I was doing a serial killer podcast to the point where I'm just like, I'm not gonna go outside. Everyone's going to murder me. I am a petite woman. Stuff me in a trunk. Why are we talking about this?
But you don't think about it. You don't think about it as like, it's, I don't know. I don't think that it's been dark until someone's like,
I know. And like my fiance all the time is like, why do you listen to this? And it's like, I think, you know, like kind of like going back on topic, I think that there is something, and we've touched on this before, like the violence towards women. You know, there is something actually like empowering about it. You know, like I was reading this morning about like something about Ted Bundy, and it's just like he's killed like 40 women. And there's something very empowering about like, especially like being a woman, like having knowledge about violence towards women, because it's like almost a protection
It's
thing.
so weird because you kind of a little bit when you're, I don't know, like in high school, I a little bit expected to die. But it's, because it's all over the place. And you're like, and it's like, does dressing unsexy save you? No! Like, just so you know. And you're like, okay, so yeah, dating is always, what was the one thing? It was like, I don't think it was like Lucy Kid, I guess we don't like it anymore, but it was like, it's like, women, like dating is like meeting a bear. There was that little bit, and especially because I don't know, my type was like if you ever see my husband, he looks like a bear. So like watching that, so it's always sort of like a weird thing of like, well, you're a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than me, let's hope you're a good person.
Dating on the dark side.
That might be the best thing I've ever
Oh dear. We wander a lot.
Yes, you have another question.
Deborah.
Hi. So I'm wondering if you guys have ever written anything and gone back and looked at it after you were done and went, oh my God, I can't put that out there because this is too much.
I wrote this novel during NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. If any of you are writers and haven't done it, do it. There's two main twists in this book that when I hit the first one, I was going, nobody's going to want to read this. It's way too twisted, it's wrong, it's terrible, oh my God, I'm an awful person, but I'm going to write it anyway. And then I hit the second twist and went, oh my God, that's even worse than the first twist. And there's nobody's going to want, okay, so I wrote it anyway. And I sent it off to a friend of mine for a beta reader, and he knows me as an art teacher, so he knows the softer, gentler side of Susan. And sent it off to him, he sent me a note back, and the only thing it said was, wow, now I'm really scared of you. So, yeah, nothing scares me. Do it.
To answer your question, yes. I wrote something so dark I didn't even want my name on it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I've also written something so dark that someone else threw it away. So.
And where on AO3 can we find it?
Well, I'm not saying.
No, but I think it's really brave to go there to at least even put it on paper, even if it doesn't get seen, to just be able to go, that's really deep and wrong and twisted, but I'm going to write it anyway.
Yeah, and it was a mental exercise. It was more to stretch my skill set and to challenge myself to go to another level. But at the end of the day, I was like, I don't even want my name on this thing. And it was a commission, so I had to write it, and it exists somewhere. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. And the other things that I wrote, they were so dark that I left the script out, and somebody read it, and it scared them so bad that they destroyed it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was hot.
I love you.
But yeah.
That's amazing, though. Honestly.
Yeah, and I can't, like, once you bloodlet it, you can't rewrite it. Yeah.
Part of why it's but part of why I changed my drawing style, like subject matter and stuff, was because my stuff was getting too dark. And because I was working with my friends and my family, and then I was like, okay, well, now I'm doing everything goofy. That was funny. But yeah, I mean, when I was younger, when I wrote more, there were a couple things that I wrote, and they actually got won awards and got published and stuff, and I was actually I had to do public readings, and I was like, I don't want to read this in front of people. They were emo AF, and I'm like, just take it, and I'm gonna go run away and go hide underneath this table. Yeah.
You're surprised. Yeah, there's always stuff. I remember in high school trying to write this serial killer story, and my mom being like, I'm not going to help you create a monster. And I was like, but you have this psychology information. There was one. I wrote a comic based on Transformers Prime, which was a cartoon show that I worked on. And they, at the end of it, they reformed their planet and it came back to life and they were all happy. And I also wrote a comic book tied into that about the people who were living under the planet. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what would be really funny? If when the planet restarts and comes back to life, everyone drowns. And it kills a bunch of people. And they're like, oh no, the planet's dying, we have to get up to the surface. And so originally there was going to be one of the characters was going to be like, well, these people are slowing us down. So I'm just going to kill them off to the side so the rest of the group doesn't know about it and we can all live, like, because no one else is going to make the hard choices. And he does, and then he gets to the surface, he's like, oh, everything's okay now? What happened to them? Oops. But then someone was like, you know this is for kids. And I was like, okay, and so I backtracked and I did not do that. But I don't think I've ever necessarily... because I write licenses, the license holds me back much more than I've ever held myself back. For a good reason.
I think we might have time for one more question. One more question. If not, we'll go to MD. If MD remembers.
Still forgot.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So, for any of you who are female creators or who identify as female, I'm still getting used to that. I embrace and support you all, so please pardon me if I'm awkward. Life on its Side, my studio, is putting together an anthology for women on the dark side. And we just opened up submissions for short fiction under 4,000 words, comic book pages, 2 to 4 pages, or artwork. There's no fee to submit. We just want to, hopefully you'll support the Kickstarter so y'all can get paid. But if you're interested, I have information up here. You can get it from us outside. And I'd love to have you submit. And the theme is Curiosity Killed the Cat. So curiosity takes your character somewhere dark. So that I have information up here. I hope you guys will submit.
Well, very briefly, let's go down the line and tell our audience members where they can find you either at the convention, if you're still here, or where they can find you online after. And MD, we're going to start with you.
Okay. I'm on Instagram, Mischievous Model, and MD Stories, MD Marie Stories, Twitter, Literary MD, and Facebook, Literary Works of MD Marie, and also under MD Marie.
Mairghread?
I'm on Twitter at Mairghread Scott. I have a website called www.scotwriter.com if you don't want to try and spell my first name. We also put out a monthly newsletter so you can find out what comics and episodes of TV might be coming out that month for you to watch. And the last thing I'm doing here today is at 1:30 I'll be signing at the DC booth.
Megan?
I'm at Black, BLACKEM_art on all social media because no one can spell my last name. And I'm downstairs at E6. And I'm doing this because Susan always brings her books to panels and I need to be more professional about my life. So I have this lovely book, which is roughly all ages, Gothic Nancy Drew story. And it has some variant covers, and I have my book Rockstars, and the second trade of this will be coming out in 2 months. And then follow me on social media because we'll be announcing our image book that I'm writing with Donnie Cates, and that will be in, I think we're announcing it in 2 months. So Susan, follow me, send me gifts.
You can follow me at Life on Its Side on all social media. Instagram's probably the best place to follow me because I try to post a lot of art. If you want to buy me a whiskey, you can go to ko-fi.com/Life on Its Side and randomly buy me a whiskey. And it's a sort of like a Patreon sort of thing, but you don't have to commit. You can just randomly today go, hey, I really like Susan, so I think I'm going to buy her a whiskey. And I'm not here I'm leaving shortly because I have to go up for a meeting, but I do have my books. I have 1 or 2 copies of Wraith of Love left, Shadow of the Night, and short book 2020. It's 20 short stories written in my writers group in 20 minutes each. And I'll hang out outside here if anybody wants to buy them from me. I will take your money any way you want to give it to me. And I'll also have these outside, and we'll have stickers outside.
What's that, MD?
We're pimping our stuff. I have the first 3 issues of Vindication also, so I'll be standing next to Susan.
We'll improvise our own little artist alley outside.
Yeah.
And Barbara, where can we find you?
Sure, so you can find Fanbase Press. We are a comic book publisher as well as a geek culture website. We are in small press SP99, and we have all of our comics and graphic novels, and we'll be doing signings and meet and greets with our creators this afternoon. But I want to say a huge thank you to Susan, Megan, Mairghread, and MD. Thank you all, and thank you to our audience members.